All right, at this time, I will call the Coventry Planning Commission meeting to order. Planning Commission meeting of Thursday, April 9th. At this time, we will have a determination of quorum. Member Price,
Here.
Member De Silva,
Here.
Member Kenny,
Here.
Member Lewis.
Here.
We have, and me, Vice Chair Studley, we have a quorum of 5. The remaining members are excused this evening. Emergency evacuation plan, we would go out those doors at the rear of the chambers and go left or right. The doors behind us will lead back into the building. Moving on, approval of minutes, February 25th, 2026. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February 25th.
Motion made by Member Kenny, seconded by Member Price. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Now we will be moving on to a public workshop discussion for the 2026 Comprehensive Plan Update. At this time, we will have a brief presentation by the Planning Department, and we will be taking public comment. Doug, if you want to.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to give a brief overview of where we're at in the process and steps moving forward and the purpose of the meeting tonight. So to begin tonight, we're going to take public comments. We've received written public comments, and there's going to be some discussion of what we've heard, feedback we've received. Note, tonight is not a public hearing, so the comments we're taking are as basically a workshop, discussion-oriented comment. We do anticipate that there will be a public hearing on this comprehensive plan at the next Planning Commission meeting date. That will be April 29th at 6:30, right back here in this room. So that's when we will consider a formal hearing and a formal action on the comprehensive plan. So this is for purposes of discussion and getting feedback on any changes the plan that the board may seek to the plan. A little background: a good chunk of this plan, in fact, the vast majority of this plan, was written in a time frame about 3 to 4 years ago, and in that time frame, the main consultant for the project at that time, Beta Group, had developed a draft with staff. That document for informal comments, it was never adopted or voted on by either the Planning Commission or the Council, but a full draft had been developed. They sent it to Statewide Planning, which is the state agency that oversees all comprehensive plans in the state. They sent it to them for informal comments. The informal comments we received gave us direction in terms of things we needed to change. One of the areas of the plan that was determined to be very deficient was the housing chapter. Particularly at that point, the town did not have any affordable housing strategies incorporated into the plan. The plan basically suggested we'll develop a plan for affordable housing later. That was not something that would have received statewide planning's approval. So that was about 2.5 years ago that the state came back with comments. Since that point, staff have worked with local stakeholders to develop initial affordable housing policies. You'll see those in the plan now. We've also been able to conduct a more thorough audit of the plan and a more thorough audit of the housing chapter in terms of what we really wanted to do there. I think it's fair to describe that the current housing chapter, although it has affordable housing content in it now, we think that's maybe at like a C+ B- level. The housing chapter should be one of the most important chapters for Coventry. We're going to experience a lot of housing growth. I think having housing policy we're very happy with at an A level is important. So we did an audit of the plan with some free technical assistance consulting work that indicated where the plan was also deficient in terms of its data, demographics, the base information of which we would then ensure the policies are framed correctly. We're also, so based on that audit, we were able to secure additional technical resources to bring in a consultant that will do a full rewrite of the housing chapter. What's in front of you today does not represent that full rewrite. That full rewrite is being worked on as we speak. However, we felt that it had been a long time coming to have a comprehensive plan adopted by this community. So we're going to actually approach this comprehensive plan as two parallel processes. The plan as it stands today, we feel very good about. The vast majority of the plan's content, we feel very good about. We think that we should be moving forward with an adoption of this current plan, while we also, as a separate process, are writing and establishing a full rewrite of the housing chapter. What this will look like is that when this group eventually provides a formal recommendation on the plan to the council will have its own series of hearings, and they'll ultimately adopt the document. It's hard to predict timing, but that might happen in the months of May, June, or July. When that is done, the next step is the document is locally adopted, but it goes to the statewide planning, who then approves at their level. And that's an important component to have a plan that's approved at the state. The state's process is that they take 5 months. So the day we give it to them, they start a 5-month clock, and they have to turn around with their own comments or edits to make sure that the plan is in good shape. Since we've gotten informal comments, we feel like we're in good shape. Now, what's going to happen is the timing of all this is lining up where the end of the statewide planning's comment process is probably about the end of the calendar year 2026. That's a lot of time, but it's a lot of time for us to also be making sure we get our housing chapter really well written. I'm working with the consultant. We anticipate initial drafts of the housing chapter, or at least elements of the content, being ready in August of this year. We're going to be working with this commission, with the council, to be vetting those initial drafts with the goal that by the time statewide planning is done with their 5-month review towards the end of this calendar year, that we also feel very happy having done some local vetting of a rewritten housing chapter. And so when the statewide planning is done, our housing chapter will be incorporated into that plan. We do anticipate the way that the housing chapter is written today would not likely meet statewide planning's approval, not because of the lack of affordable housing, we now have that, but because the data, it's a critical element, and the data is now reflecting data from 3 to 4 years ago. So we want that to be an A+ chapter. So that's a little background on process. As we go through this, anyone that wants to comment on what they see in the housing chapter, we'd like to hear it. But there's a conversation to be had on, is this something we want to change in this current plan, or is this a piece of information we want to pass along to the consultant and have as part of our separate parallel process, have it in the new housing chapter? So as we get content on housing, affordable housing, I think it's valid. We want to hear about it. We want to use this process to inform ourselves. But there's pieces of this where we might not be wordsmithing this document. We're working on a full new draft. Another component of this is that we had received about 2 months ago information from the consultant GZA, who was tasked by the town's redevelopment authority to assist with the underpinnings of a Johnston's Pond redevelopment plan. This is something that the town has been discussing for quite a while. The idea is that the comprehensive plan needed to lay the groundwork and establish from a townwide perspective, this was a good direction we wanted to go for Johnston's Pond. Once the comprehensive plan is adopted, that from the consultant's perspective gives them the right to draft a full Johnston's Pond redevelopment plan. So that is another component that is in this draft that you have, the Johnston's Pond content, GZA's desired edits were incorporated into this draft you currently have. Upon adopting this draft, it will provide the redevelopment authority what they need to move forward with their process. So those are just a couple of, I think, relevant topical issues that people might want to understand how it relates to this plan. Before we move forward, I think my envisioned process for this workshop was get some feedback from the board members, questions on process, but really the goal for tonight is to get an understanding from you as to if there's anything in this plan you'd like to see changed, and staff will prepare those changes for our April 29th hearing. So this is meant to be informal. People are allowed to raise conceptual ideas, but we will want to hear from you on the feedback we've gotten, the comments we've gotten. If you see ideas that you want to see staff pursue, if you see direction you want to help give us some better focus on. But then, also, I think one big thing to keep in mind is that we want this plan to be good. We want to make sure that we've gone through public process. This plan, there's a lot of opportunities to continually refine a comprehensive plan. We're getting some feedback that suggests that we should conduct deeper studies of infrastructure or other items before adopting the plan or in concert with adopting the plan. That's good to know. We can amend the comprehensive plan up to 4 times a year. We could adopt a plan, have it go to statewide planning, have a fully approved state plan, and if we are conducting studies and we think we can get better and we can make a good plan better, we can do that within months after adopting. So one thing I want to keep in mind is that we want this plan to be a good plan for our community, but also we want to understand that we can always continually improve this plan moving forward. So that's a little bit of background on process, goal for tonight. I think my first reaction is we certainly are going to want to hear from the public. All of you guys are aware, you've been sent every public comment we've received. But my first goal is to hear from the commission, questions from you, ideas from you, loose discussion. And then I think we'll hear from the public, and then staff can kind of walk through perhaps any pieces of guidance or questions we would have to make sure we get the plan right for the next meeting. Does that make sense to all folks? Great. So let me know. I mean, the floor is yours. Feel free to jump in with any questions you may have.
So you had mentioned that the housing plan might be at a B or a C, and that we're undergoing this process to rewrite that version, and we have opportunity to change the plan. For the benefit of the public, some people might ask, why not just wait to approve the plan at a later date? Can you kind of explain maybe the risk of waiting longer?
I think this town has not had an approved comprehensive plan since 2005. I believe that's when the current plan basically expired. So we've been over 20 years without an approved adopted comprehensive plan. There's a lot of value in having an approved adopted comprehensive plan. And so there is a component of this. In a perfect world, we'd have that housing chapter exactly where we want it today. We would have achieved that funding and those consultants, and that would have happened 2 years ago, and we'd be with you with a great housing chapter today. Unfortunately, the reality is we've got the resources we got when we got them. We do feel it's important to have a plan on the books and not to have the entire process kicked back what could have essentially be another 9 months. So instead of having a comprehensive plan where we're looking at an adoption date at the end of this calendar year, we would be looking at a comprehensive plan that would have an adoption date, somewhere halfway through or 3/4 through 2027. And I think the goal is, months count. We want to get this plan on the books. It serves a lot of functions for the community. That's why we're going through a unique process to basically adopt a plan while there's a chunk of it that we're rewriting. When we come back for the housing chapter, we're going to have a robust process there. We're going to want to hear from folks. We're going to want to have consensus by our decision makers, the Planning Commission, the council. So that's something that we will have a lot of vetting, and that's something that we'll make sure that can be as where it needs to be by the end of this calendar year. Manager Perillo.
If I can just add in response to that question, I think the combination of the comprehensive plan along with the RDA plan is a priority. So RDA's redevelopment plan is close to being done in May. That task was given to them by the council, which is also tied to the lawsuit that's currently ongoing over Johnson's Pond. So I think if we have the comp plan in place that allows redevelopment to pass their plan, allows council to adopt their plan, and that's something we can obviously submit to the court to show that we are in the process of creating that recreational space that we guaranteed the court. So I think as quickly as we can do that, as long as we do our due diligence, that's kind of our goal.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do any other members of the board have any questions, comments before we open up for public comment?
Are we addressing?
Yeah, I do want I mean, obviously there's voluminous public comments. I think we do want to hear from you. I know that you take your time, you go through it, you read it. Also, this plan, it's a beast to digest this plan, and I appreciate the effort the commission has put in. This doesn't have to be the time where we get into it, but also this is your meeting. If you want to get into some ideas, start discussing them now. My thought is whenever we reach the end of your deliberation, the end of public comments, we have some folks on Zoom as well as the folks that are here. I mean, planning staff have a loose idea on some of the comments we've received that, especially we sent this out to town boards, committees, department heads alike. Some of them are very clear, clean, straightforward edits. Some of them aren't really policy changes. They're just factual changes to make the plan more accurate. We certainly got a lot of content that is in the territory of bigger sweeping policy changes. Planning staff, I think, will lead you through where we see something straightforward. We want to make sure you agree. Where we see there's content, where there's ideas that we want to get your feedback on. But every comment you've received, if you see good ideas there, we want to hear from you. If you want to see how we incorporate, if you want to help guide us to incorporate that into the plan. So I'd say, Member Kenny, if you want to ask any questions now, or you can just wait until after public comment, we get all the feedback and then we can get into it then.
I guess talk about the plan straightforward. It's more of, how do I say it? Okay, it's more of a dissertation on what they see as wrong and why we're building so much and infrastructure and all that stuff.
Yep.
Where is that better addressed?
So the plan does have content that dictates the terms of, for example, development, growth, and density. A comprehensive plan can't be used to do something that the town doesn't have the authority to do. I mean, we can't just suddenly say that the plan will say no more development. We can use the plan to guide development. We can use the plan to talk about, do we have the right densities in the right areas of town? You know, it can be challenging. Again, this is it's a dense, robust plan. It was built on a lot of public engagement and feedback. Some of that occurred 3 to 4 years ago. Some of that has occurred within the last year or two. I do think that you should weigh it all. Something that's very difficult to do is to take a broad concept like the plan should be meant to pump the brakes on development and then understand what level of edit are we making. You know, the plan is you can't just kind of pick a page and say, in that page, on that section, right, you know, we don't support broad, dense development of the scale. You have to look at it really concretely. You have to see where our plan dictates the future land use map, dictates density. That's how we establish zoning. If we suddenly say, you know, our plan should tell us that all of the zones should be less dense, we have a task in front of us, probably a pretty significant research task as well, as to what does it mean if we took all of our R20 zoning and made it, instead of half-acre lots, acre lots? What's the impact of that? How many nonconformities are we creating? There are a number of issues that are not bad concepts, but would take a lot of study to understand exactly what change we want to make to this plan. And that's why if you see a concept that you're interested in, we want to hear about it so that planning staff can start to advance what that looks like. It's fair to say there's concepts in the comments that you've got. It's difficult to know how we just change the plan to incorporate that.
You know, there's developers coming in and buying up all this land and development. You can't tell people they can't buy land for sale.
That's correct.
And then once they buy, they can develop it, crosses all the T's, dots all the I's. It's not that we can't say no, but why, it's this the same as You guys tell me I can't put a shed up in the back of my house. Well, it's 15 feet from the boundary lines. It's not a permanent structure, it's on pillars. Everything I read says I can do it. Just because my neighbor next door says it's gonna block, his view of the tree that he likes to look at, it doesn't. And that's what a lot of the comments are. And I'll tell you, I read some really good comments, and then it got to a section where I'm seeing comments like, people serving a town that they don't live in and pockets are being lined. It's not fair. There are things going on behind the scenes. Again, I really take offense to comments from people from the town for that. Not one of us are taking bribes up here. We're on this commission volunteer. Yes, we get a stipend of $90 a month, whether we work 1 hour or 40 hours. We get one stipend. And I'm a pretty ethical guy, and I call things the way I see it. People may not agree with how I see things, but I try and not go outside the bounds of what is laid out for me between town policies, state law, and United States law. I was an officer in the military for 30 years, and I dealt with all kinds of different positions, from environmental law in the military to combat operations. So ethically, it really bothers me when somebody challenges my ethics and the ethics of other people on this board. And what that does for me is I'll read a comment, I'll get all the way through it and say, this person's got some really good comments. And then I see that at the end, and it kind of just sours me on everything they wrote. It really does. And I wish the audience and the people out there of this town that are so passionate about their views would understand that and stop attacking the people that are trying to weed through all of this for them. Even though they come up and say their piece and it doesn't go their way, I understand that. You get upset, you get aggravated. But by slinging mud against people that are volunteering to do this, it really bothers me. And if you feel that passionate about it, step up, volunteer, and get on a committee. Simple as that. That's why I'm here. I started with the Juvenile Detention Committee, and I went to here. And eventually I'm gonna look to go to town council. But stop jumping up and down and volunteer to get on a committee and help us out, because there are a lot of vacancies on a lot of committees. That's all I have to say for now. Sorry if that's a little off topic, but.
That's fine, Member Kenny. I think your comments are well taken. It's a difficult process to for all parties. I think this commission has a challenging job. This plan can't be all things to all people. It can't. And so that is a challenging job to take a lot of feedback and find a way to fit it into a complex document. And you're right, the document also still is going to get reviewed by statewide planning. They have their own barometers for what is acceptable. We're not allowed to, for example, say we just won't build affordable housing. It wouldn't get state approval. We're not allowed to say we're going to strip property owners of their development rights. That wouldn't gain state approval. So I think you're right. We try to take the guidance the best we can. We try to see where we can make a change to the plan the best we can. But I understand that it is arduous to go through the process and to try to weed through the feedback like that. So I know this commission is dedicated. I know this commission has done a stand-up job. In my time here, this commission is one of the best I've seen in the state. It operates at a very high level. You are collaborative with each other, but you also allow just diverse voices to come out. So I'm pretty happy, and I have a lot of faith that this commission can guide the right plan to where it needs to be. And folks, this is not the end of the line for this plan. It goes to the council, and council members can make edits as they see fit. And there's going to be a whole hearing process at the council level, but I have faith that this commission can put this plan into the best spot possible as we send it to the council. So,
Thank you.
other questions, comments?
All right, yeah, so at this time, why don't we open up public comment? This isn't a hearing. Do we need like a motion?
No, it's not a hearing, but we certainly will take all the comments that people want to make.
Yeah, so at this time, anybody that's either in the room or online, let's start within the room. Anybody want to come up to the podium?
Only two.
Don't be shy. Yes, just press it so it's green and then name and address for the record.
Hi, Lisa Massey, 31 Old Summit Road. I'm here tonight because I'm concerned that the draft Comprehensive Community Plan, CCP, does not have stronger language regarding demonstration of the new commercial projects, in particular, and pay, quote, particular attention to the preservation and enhancement of the visual, traditional, and historic character of the Summit Village vicinity. Like the previous CCP, the findings of the draft CCP itself states that, quote, residents have expressed their desire to avoid further development of Western Coventry and to maintain the area's rural character. Yet recent projects proposed for Summit Village that are using the draft CCP for guidance don't seem to have any thought given to the visual, traditional, and historic character of Summit Village. It would be an eyesore that no amounts of vegetative buffers could fix and would have a real, very negative effect on the values of neighboring properties. When I look at the zoning to prepare for tonight, self-storage facilities are not allowed. But what is allowed is storage of vehicles, which is what they have in their staff report. Commercial equipment storage facility for contractor use. I'm going to assume that that language is in there for Summit Village because of the Salt Dome. The Salt Dome is there, and it's typically they store these ginormous vehicles in there. However, I would like to bring to your attention that many of the residences in the Summit Village are negatively impacted by the Salt Dome through elevated levels of chloride. In one case, the DOT, Department of Transportation, is now involved with all of these cases. One case, they began digging wells for the resident. They got to 4 wells, and they couldn't find an area that was clean enough to use. So they stopped doing that. In another case, there is one neighbor who is receiving water provided from DOT because it's not drinkable. There's another neighbor who has paid out of pocket for a very expensive reverse osmosis system, whole house reverse osmosis, because this is getting into all of our appliances and everything, right? So even if we brought in drinking water, it doesn't solve the whole building situation. I wasn't sure if you were aware, so I just wanted to throw that out there. Yes, sir. The Salt Dome is run by DOT. It's the state.
Off the top of my head, I believe that the crossroads out there are both state, and they're numbered roads, right?
It's 102 and 117, correct?
Yeah.
That's where they are,
Yeah.
correct?
Without having it in front of me, I believe they're both state roads.
Correct. As is, by the way, Old Summit Road, which even though it doesn't go, because 117 used to go right through the village. I have a family friend who I spoke to about this who works at DEM, and he told me that a lot of these facilities are getting taken out in some of the areas around the state where they are impacting wells negatively. Yet we have this development going in, which if you're not aware, it's a 17-unit commercial condo. And I understand that they want to, store vehicles there. However, how do we know what they're storing in these facilities? And who's going to monitor these facilities? And because they're condos, they'll be sold and then sold again and sold again and sold again. So I just wanted to put that out there. I know that the town is affected by the state demands, and I heard the man from Portsmouth talking about the affordable housing in different situations. I just want you to take into consideration that we don't have some of the resources available. We don't have town water. We don't have town sewers. So all of these businesses and/or multi-unit housing projects are going to be a drain on the resources that we have. And so I'm hoping that you can consider standing up for some of these and just trying to keep Western Coventry rural and not negatively impacted by some of these. I know commercial demands are also out there. And in other towns, I did a little research on that, they seem to distinguish between light industrial and heavy industrial. This clearly looks like heavy industrial to me, and light industrial better suits the needs, they put that in the language for residential areas. This would be office buildings, something that's not creating a huge impact on the neighborhood. They drive in, they're there for a little while, they drive out. And in conclusion, I just wanted to say that this would certainly lower property values. It has a negative impact on the quality of life through noise and the natural resources. It has a negative impact on the character of the village and really provides no goods or services, and we have nothing. So it would be nice to have something different out there that we could all use. I lived and worked in Newport, downtown Newport, and I know they have extremely explicit language regarding how many panes you can have in the window and the colors that you paint. I'm not saying to go to that extreme, but please consider the character of these historical villages that we have in town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else in the chambers with a public comment?
And if I might just add, I want us to be thoughtful of Open Meetings Act limitations. We can definitely receive comments on a broad range of things, including concepts of growth, concepts of villages. One thing we have to be careful on is we can't talk about specific projects or properties that aren't on our agenda that we may also have other binding actions on. But I don't mind us having broad conversations about guiding growth, guiding character, and villages and broad intersections. So just wanted to be mindful as you hear this and as you discuss it, we'll avoid any specific projects or properties.
Understood. Thank you. Come on up. Name and address for the record, please.
Jason Nunes, Fourview Road. Last week I submitted a bunch of information. I don't know if you guys had gotten it or not. Right. Well, one is a question, and it's a requirement for the subdivision of land. And if you look at like the major development portion of it, it says like days to certify complete. It was originally 60 and it got slashed to 25. And then days after certified complete for PC decision, it was 120, it got slashed to 90. Was that from the town or was that from the state?
So those are state requirements.
That was all state
that,
requirements. So
uh,
that's kind of
Cities and
where
towns had
you guys
to
got
change their
handcuffed
zoning and
into,
subdivision regulations. to
making a
commit.
decision in a timely manner.
And I would say that a lot of those changes aren't necessarily just to speed up the process, but the processes themselves changed. So
Yeah.
in other words, some actions became administrative approvals. Some of the thresholds for major land development versus minor land development changed. So therefore, the timelines changed just to match the new process.
Yeah, okay. I think one of the pages that I submitted was, it looks like action 9. That I got from the original beta, conservation report that was like, I'm gonna say like 4 years old, that I noticed that wasn't in the new one. Well, first of all, I want to commend all you people on the commission for the minor stipend that you get and the hours that you put in. I don't know if I would work for 25 cents an hour. But anyway, putting that aside. Okay, now, on the original draft proposal, I think you have Mia, you don't have Mia Ionati as District 4 on that printout. That should be changed. And then I also put like a bunch of comments here, like for Volume 2, Part 1, 1.1.1, minimum density, new residential development and redevelopment at a density of 5 units per acre. And then can this be worded as 5 additional, like a 5 total unit per acre? Like let's take an R20 zone, for an example, where it's like 1 property per acre. And then you take the density bonus because they're given the 25% affordable and low and medium housing. That would make it 6 units per acre. Can we use that wordage to just use that 5 acre bonus, including that 1? I don't know. This is just a think tank and thoughts I'm just trying to throw out there. I don't know what's valid and what's not. Maybe you guys can decipher for that. You want me to just keep moving right along? Because I don't expect you guys to give me an answer because you're going to have to
I
do
don't have an answer
some
off the top
digging
of my
into
head,
that.
but
Yeah.
yeah, you certainly can keep moving on and we'll take all the comments.
Okay. And then the Volume 2, Part 1, Chapter 1, land use. If new and unforeseen opportunities to better meet the Coventry's goals and aspirations emerge in the years ahead, it may be entirely appropriate to deviate from the guidelines of this section. That paragraph, I think, should be stricken from that draft because that just opens up the door to any which way or means to get their approval. That's a real harsh paragraph. I don't know if it can be stricken. I think this is still like in the form of a draft. Maybe you guys can kind of like talk this over and maybe come up with some better wordage to that.
Give the town leeway, but to your point, it can also be used against you, certainly.
Well,
So a decision has to be made on, to your point.
I'm going to be biased because I'm not looking at the developments, the developers. I'm looking at the resident. Right. That's something, I mean, hopefully you guys can come to some kind of a conclusion with that. Okay, Volume 2, Part 1, Chapter 2, Natural Resources and Conservation. Page 52, it's 2.3.2, Opportunities, Paragraph 3. If we could add in the word bald eagle protection along Lake Tioga, it's not mentioned anywhere. And then I also looked into Chapter 2, page 28, 2.2.7, and it's also like a category for known critical, uncommon, or fragile wildlife habitat, and there's no mention of bald eagles. You want me to just keep going along? I mean, I don't expect you guys to answer any of this because you guys got to you got to decipher the up and down to this. Volume 2, Part 1, page 48 and 49, water quality of sufficient water bodies. Everything's all about Johnson's Pond. There's no mention of Breezy Lake or Lake Tioga, and those are 2 more town water bodies that are owned by the town. And I might add, Lake Tioga is the only water body that has a town beach that collects revenues. So it shouldn't be forgotten about. Page 50, needs and opportunities, the last paragraph. Coventry should develop an environmental management plan for Johnson's Pond to protect the pond from environmental degradation and future water quality impairments. The town council just approved weed abatement for Johnson's Pond, Lake Tioga, and Breezy Lake. I think they call it Upper Dam Pond too also. So if we can add the words, I don't know if you want to use Breezy Lake and Lake Tioga or Upper Dam Pond, Lake Tioga, if those could be added, that'd be great. Volume 2, Part 2, Chapter 5, Housing, page 5, Table 5.3, Certificate of Occupancy. The census is from 2022. That's kind of like, it's old data. It's not true data, you know what I mean? We're submitting a draft in the year 2026. I think we really need to try to like zero in on some true occupancy. Volume 2, Part 2, Chapter 6, Economic Development, page 4, Table 6.1. It shows the tax rates for 2021, where residential was $19.40 and commercial was $23.39. For 2025, the residential rate was 20.56 with also a $2.02 fire tax, like per thousand. It comes to 22.67, and the commercial rate is 22.26. So I think the current draft right now, I think, is using the old pricing. So, I mean, Chapter 7, Community Services and Facilities, page 18, Table 7.4, Stormwater Impairment Watersheds. Upper Dam Pond should be yes. Lake Tioga should be yes. I think, did you guys get like all this stuff? Oh, all right, okay, good. All right. Excellent. So I don't even have to read this. But I mean, I should do because there's people on Zoom, right? Okay. Volume 2, Part 2, Chapter 9, Transportation, 9.3.1, page 19, third paragraph. I don't know if this is still true. The privately owned school buses for the town of Coventry, they park at 50 Wood Street, which is the town complex. The town could charge for parking and storage of them vehicles because it's not the school department's buses. It's third party. It's a private company for profit for the school department.
We'll look at the contract to see if that's actually.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're still doing that. They did move? I guess social media does hurt. Okay, Volume 2, Part 2, Chapter 10, Natural Hazards and Climate Change. Page 14, 10.3, flood-prone areas. If we could add Tiffany Road, because that's been a known low-lying flooding area, and then also on East Shore Drive. That's another one. Now, I don't have anything written else, but on the comprehensive permit, the planning commission can vote down a project on impact with infrastructure and stuff like that. If we could guesstimate the size of the project versus, like, say it's 100 units and some of them are 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms. Well, you know there's going to be probably 2 cars. You know there's probably going to be at least 1 or 2 kids. If we can, it's going to be a little bit of work to do this, but if we can guesstimate, okay, there's going to be 30 more kids in that project, in that development. Can that school in that area handle the impact of them 30 kids? Now, I think the way they're doing this traffic study is they're just looking on a safety aspect. Whereas, okay, yeah, you pull up, 2.3 seconds later, okay, you pull out and you're gone. But now when you start having these major developments down near the New London Turnpike and the Arnold Road, and the ones that are approved are over 1,000 units within the next 5 years, them 1,000 units is going to be a major impact in that area. But now if Vinnie Bag of Donuts says, hey, I just got a new development down there and I'm going to do a traffic study, they're going to do that traffic study on a safety purpose. They're not going to be looking at the impact of them 1,400 or 1,800 cars in the next 5 years, where that's about the time where they'll have this full build out. They're not taking into consideration the volume of this impact over the course of time for all these projects. I don't think it's not being worked into the traffic studies or the impact itself. Now, if you have 1,000 units and say you have another additional 500 kids, I'm pretty sure our school department can't handle that. That's our biggest portion of what it costs the town to run, is the school department. So between the school department and the traffic study, I think if you could put some wordage in there to protect the town, to give these developers advance notice that this is the requirement you're going to need to have a major land development in our town. You don't want to just try to pull on the rug after they do all this work and they got thousands and thousands of dollars invested in this future development and then try pulling the rug on them at the last minute. If it could be worded up front, you want to put a major land development, this is the guidelines. This is what you got to follow. If it fits, it fits. If it don't, it don't. I guess that's about all I got. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. One more? Hi, name and address for the record, please.
Samantha Sargent, and it's 285 Logbridge Road.
Go ahead.
Forgive me, I don't have my papers, so I got to read off my phone. But going through, starting with the history of Coventry, most of the spoken parts about Summit Village, there's no historical standings. It's kind of been stripped. There's one reference to the historical standings of Summit Village throughout. Part of that is the revitalization of villages. Summit Village is not included in that either. And also the suggestion of Summit Village being a rural hub or a commercial growth spot is as you heard, touched on a bit about, but I mean, that poses a high risk of contamination to wells. Not only that, Summit Village is entirely on top of a protected wellhead. Amongst that, it is a natural, I just forgot, it's a natural habitat area. So it's a heritage area, excuse me. So there's endangered and, at-risk plant life in the area as well. Besides that, the high risk of contamination to wells, but also high water table to add to that. We have a very high water table. There's a lot of wetlands throughout Summit Village, and they're all interconnected. One of them is a major river, and it escapes me at the moment, the name of it, but it runs right through. So to kind of direct commercial development to Summit Village is irresponsible. It poses a great risk to public health and welfare of the residents and the wildlife in the area. As you heard, there is a pending development also that doesn't meet either the old comprehensive plan or any of the new comprehensive plan uses. Part of that would be the light industrial use. What they're posing is not light industrial uses. So along with that, industrial uses, they have different guidelines. There's performance guidelines and standards that they have to adhere to, different tests that have to be done, hazardous materials, storages, things like that they have to adhere to. None of those regulations are set forth for the village rural commercial use or what they want to change it to, which is the mixed use village. So either way, there's not enough appropriate safeguards in place for the historical preservation of Summit Village for a commercial development. Not only that, there's things in place for high density residential developments out in the western end, but there's nothing for commercial high density, which is basically being proposed for the entire Summit Village area. So I would say, again, we don't have the infrastructure. We do not have public water. We do not have public sewers. We do not have street lamps. We do not have fire hydrants. We do not have sidewalks. You know, and beyond that, commercial use for the village is supposed to be of service to the area. It's supposed to provide goods and services. You know, the pending development, I know you can't talk about, but they provide no goods or services. It is a storage facility is what they're proposing. It's not a brick and mortar business that's building one garage or a pole barn to store their equipment and their materials. And again, we have no idea what materials will be stored there. So that kind of sets the tone, you know, for commercial development in the area, you know, of what can be put there. And there's advantages being taken by developers at the moment because there's not enough proper safeguards to protect the historical area, the character, and the rural preservation of the western end. So, and then, let's see, sorry, I just have to look. Again, wetlands, there should be something stated about the Migratory Bird Act as well, and protection of the migratory birds. Some of them are not necessarily on the endangered list, but they're next up to go. You know, they're at-risk birds. We have a lot of them in the Summit area that return every year. It's a huge long list of birds that will be affected by commercial development throughout the village. Also, there is a suggestion for an agricultural overlay for the area. I would also like to make the suggestion of proposing an agricultural commission to help with safeguards and advocacy, excuse me, for agriculture operations. There's a lot of them. And then to touch on that, it does say in the farm and forest and open space, it says that farms have to be at least 5 acres according to the state law, and that's incorrect. There is no size limit to acreages for small farms. Hobby farms and sustenance farms are also included in that. So it should say something about that, and that should be changed. It really, all it takes is $10 in an application to DEM and a visit, and you're all set, you know? So there's no minimum acreage there, so I find that's very misleading for, you know, your small farmer. Yeah, and I think that that pretty much rounds it up for me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like we've covered everybody in the room. It looks like we do have a couple of people online. If you want to raise your hand if you're on Zoom. Looks like we have one so far. Mia Rose Iannotti, it looks like you're in. Just unmute your mic. Name and address for the record, please.
Mia Rose Iannotti, 198 MacArthur Boulevard, Coventry, Rhode Island.
Perfect. Go ahead.
So, hi guys. So my concern is the draft, it's openly calls for higher density housing by the right of the sewered areas. It also states that we can change zoning at any time, which is a major red flag to me. And I like to see some wording in it so that it's not so easily changed. The Flume table says high density residential rezoned to allow multifamily by right in these areas tied to sewer access. And the draft also encourages mixed use, which is fine. But again, with the housing goals, that's a red flag to me for developers. Can you guys tell me what safeguards do we have in the plan now that actually directs where we can direct builders to build? Do we have anything in the plan that allows us to direct traffic, to direct these homes like West Greenwich did up at the center of New England?
I'll try to answer that. Yeah, the plan does have content that does direct where we want to see growth density. And so it's generally the future land use map then ties to where the zoning allowances are. So, you know, where we allow R20 zoning, half-acre lots, the plan does have a role in dictating where we want that zone to be. So I don't know if that answers your question, Councilwoman.
So in one of it also says that one of the implementation actions is to evaluate code changes to allow two-family and multi-family housing, not just through the comprehensive permits in areas with sewer and transit access. So the draft is not only reacting to like state affordable housing laws, it's also a proposing the code changes that could broaden any type of this housing to happen in Coventry. Is that correct?
I'll try to take a stab at that. Yeah, without having that language in front of me, I do believe the code does speak to the concept of allowing multifamily or two-family housing as uses. Those uses historically were allowed in this community by special use permit for many years, up until about 2 years ago. 2 years ago, the state changed the laws on special use permits, and the town felt that we wanted to have better control of those uses. So we actually turned those uses into not allowed in the town. So without a comprehensive permit right now, you can't develop a multifamily or two-family unit of any type in town. We are interested in exploring where we can allow those types of uses. That might not mean that it's going to be an increase in density. It might mean that you could develop on a lot 10 single families, or we could give someone on the same lot to develop 10 units as duplexes. So you'd end up with the same units. There are conversations about that. So that is not, I think that language in the plan is not something that we have changed, but this is language in the plan that I think will get addressed as part of the new housing chapter. So I think this is an area of content that we can absolutely give more discussion on how this should be handled by the town as part of that new housing chapter, as we redraft that really from the ground up.
So we'll tighten that instead of it, like we may be. We're gonna tighten that wordage up, right? Like I heard.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
just like to know, like, we'll definitely change that to tighten it up.
Are you asking if we'll change it at this very moment for this draft, or are you asking if we'll change it as part of the rewrite of the housing chapter?
But this is gonna go in, right? So this isn't getting approved. This is just the draft, correct? Like you said?
Yeah,
All
this
right,
is
so
just a draft.
I'd like that to be in, the final review, the final draft, absolutely.
Yeah,
And- Go ahead.
and Councilwoman, you'll absolutely have a chance to give detailed edits of this document when it reaches the council. So if you want, we can definitely talk offline. I'm not sure if I know exactly the specific change you're looking to make, if it's to
Yeah.
not allow multifamily or two-family. We can definitely have a conversation on if there's a change we should make to this plan. I would say all housing issues are probably something that we're going to take a deep dive on. Everything you see in the housing chapter is going to be rewritten over the course of the summer, and the commission and the town council will all have a robust role to make sure that you feel comfortable with the rewritten housing chapter.
Right. And I'd also like to, as far as, I know it's expensive and I know it's probably a lot of work, but I really believe for future councils, for future years, I believe that each study that I requested in my resolution needs to be applied to go into the comprehensive plan, because we do need a traffic study. We can't base it off a 3-year-old traffic study. We need a school study, a financial responsibility study. I mean, environmental study. I mean, right now we're building over there, you have bald eagles that didn't get taken into consideration. I mean, if they did, it was vague. I think that we need to build future. We need to build smart. And we can all be, quite frank, we can all honestly look around and say our infrastructure is not where it's supposed to be. So my fear is we're crowding roads. We have school problems, police problems, fire department problems, and crumbling roads, flooding, drainage. And to me, that's like building a house and you're saying you're done, but you didn't put the roof on it. I mean, it's to protect it from the environment. So I'm really strong on having these studies done for the fiscal, I can't even say that word, fiscal impact. I mean, because housing is going to increase the service costs. School costs are going to go up. Our roads, when they're not paved correctly now. So my strong push on all of this is smart planning. And I know you guys are doing a great job, and I know a lot of this is being pushed down from the state, and I understand your position, but I also think from some verbiage in this comprehensive plan, they say at one point that we're going to be their superstar, that we're basically, their star pupil. And I don't believe that should happen. I believe what needs to happen for this town is first we need to figure out our own infrastructure, our own roads, where we have something. I mean, we don't have multiple roads to come into Coventry. So I can't see us changing zoning laws to fit all these homes in. And again, I'm not against build at all. I'm against build that's coming because it's being pushed, but it doesn't make any practical sense. So I'd like to see some strong changes at the final review where we definitely are protecting ourselves and the residents in town, especially with all the flooding. I mean, does that make sense? I mean, are we all on board with that? Is that where you guys are going? And I understand it's a state push, but we have some very weak language in here that I think needs to be tightened, and that's my 2 cents. But it's all about the residents and our town, not because the state says so. They don't even look at towns as towns individually. They just put this 10% and then said everybody needs to follow it instead of looking at each town directly on where we're at. And we have our own things that we need to fix before we start pushing all this other stuff. So that's my major concern. And I also have a major concern because this is going to guide us for years to come, that with those studies, always having to look at them because things change, then we know future council, future planning, and even for the builders, we're not letting them get off on fiscal study, on all road studies and traffic and water studies, like very weak, because down the road, we're going to have a problem. And I personally don't want to be involved in the problem. I'd rather be involved in a solution that's going to protect the town for years to come. So we're not in a mess. I hope that makes sense.
It does.
If
Thank
I
you.
can jump in, I think we all agree with you, but again, this is a comprehensive plan, and you're right. There's a lot in here, and a lot of it in here is suggestions that are going to go to the town and to the council. And a lot of what you talked about, Mia, is stuff that the council will have to do in the form of an ordinance or come up with the plan on how they want to approach it. This is just a roadmap that says, hey, these are the left and right guidelines. These are what's going to do it. But the town council are the ones that are going to decide what the priorities are that we're going to work for in here. And
Okay.
a lot of what you said is going to come down to the council itself making those decisions and passing ordinances and making determinations on where we're going to put money. We can put all of that in here, but it's only going to be as good as the council wants it to be, and the decisions that the council makes and how they decide to prioritize what we do in the comprehensive plan.
Correct.
So we can put it in here, Councilwoman Ionati, absolutely. But again, it's going to come down to the council making the majority of these decisions on where to spend money and how they're going to prioritize what's in this plan.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. If
Hey.
I could also add and possibly clarify a little bit about what the plan is actually proposing, because I did find that comment or that policy proposed change on, let's see, page 28. And it marks the category on the future land use map as high-density residential. And that's categorized as a minimum of 5 dwelling units per acre. Currently, our smallest residential zone is R20, and the plan notes that there's no zoning district in Coventry that meets that density requirement. So I don't think that the plan is saying blanket multifamily by right everywhere. I think it's saying in the future land use map where there are high-density residential designations, that those should be zoned specific to that those specific parcels should be rezoned, not blanket across the town.
Understood. And that's why I get back to my traffic study and why I get back to every study, just because it says it. we haven't looked at traffic studies, the impact studies, and obviously it's part of the town council, and that's something we have to look at, but I think that's important to protect every resident, our streets, our fiscal impact. And I see a lot of it, and it's not just not you. And I know it's coming from state. And like I said before, I don't believe they took into account every town is different, but we have some issues that we need to resolve before we start stuffing in all kinds of housing, between the flooding and the septic and the sewers and the wells. Okay, so it's really town council, but I believe that we really need to put these studies in there, even if they are expensive, because we're not doing our due diligence. If they're too, I mean, saying it's too expensive, that's not, that shouldn't be an excuse. That should be something that we have written in there, because ultimately it's going to fall on the town, and we didn't want to do it because it might have cost a little bit of money, but we didn't build correctly then. But thank you.
Thank you. It looks like we have another hand raised. We'll bring you in. Hold one moment. All right, Cheryl, unmute your mic. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Cheryl Kane, 185 Reed Schoolhouse Road. Good night, good evening, everyone. The reason I keep on hearing about how we can't afford all these developments, which is true, and I haven't heard anybody mention about increasing the impact fees. If they're, like you said, that if the children, if it's $21,000 per child to go into our school system, in addition to everything else that these homes and developments will bring to our town, I think that we have to increase the impact fees. There is no other choice. I mean, this would help the roads, schools, the police, the fire department, everything would be about these impact fees. Since we don't have the brick and mortar establishments, we have to get the money somewhere. And I believe it should be come from the developments, not from the taxpayers. It shouldn't be on their backs whatsoever. They're giving up a lot of their way of living. First of all, when people come to Coventry, they do expect a certain way of living. They do expect not to hear, the trees are all gone now. It's not rural anymore like it used to be in a lot of different areas. So there is a lot of adjustments. So I think that's one reason. And also, I think that when you do think about the different zoning areas, you have to take into consideration that people move into these areas because of mental health conditions. They might have children that are in the autistic spectrum, where they're out and they might buy a 5-acre plot, and then all of a sudden you have a cluster coming next door, and they're only 80 feet away or 60 feet away. So I do feel that we do have to pay attention to that also. I mean, we have veterans that have PTSD. So, I mean, when people pick a certain area where they're going to move to, there's a lot of thought. There's a lot of thought in that. So I want you to really think about when you are changing this zoning, what you are doing to people that have bought in these areas for certain reasons, because of their lifestyles, because of their health issues. They could be asthmatic and they have to be out in the open. You can't be in the city. There's just so many things. So that is really my concern when it comes to that. I also I'm not going to go what Mia just said. Thank you so much, Mia. I mean, you get pointed at a lot of things, which a lot of people have. Mr. Nunes, thank you so much. You're always one that we can always count on. But think about it, please. What we all remember is what you didn't do for this town. You know how it does. You can do a million good things. No one's ever going to pat you on the back. You do that one thing, we will remember you forever. But please, I know it's a hard job, but you are there to represent us. You are us. And we hope that you choose and make the right decisions. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Is there anybody else on Zoom that would like to provide public comment? If so, raise your hand. Going once, twice. Looks like no. At this time, come on up.
Jason Nunes, Fourview Road. I think a lot of people are kind of getting away from where we're at right now, because right now we have the comprehensive draft that we want to present now. And then we have one that's a little more in depth in the housing that's going to come later. So what you guys have in front of you now is like 346 pages of stuff, right? And yeah, the whole binder. So I think if you guys can tweak what you can tweak in accordance to that and get that through the town council, that's the first step. The second step is to like really tune in on the housing part of it. And I think everybody out there that like, there's a lot of people that are going to watch this on YouTube tomorrow. They're not on Zoom right now. But I want everybody to like just focus in on, we need something now. And this whole thing with the Johnson's Pond is part of this. Through the courts and stuff, where we almost need this done now. We can do the housing later, but let's not forget about the housing, because that's a big issue on a lot of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Looks like everybody that wanted to speak has had the opportunity to, so I'll open it back up to the board. Based on everything that we've heard and received thus far, does anybody have any specific comments, questions, concerns related to any specific element of the plan that they would like to see edited or changed, or just provide comment on?
Doug, a lot of the comments were, we are following all the ordinances as far as zoning and everything else that's currently in here. Right. So that's the other piece that, in order to change anything that involves zoning or lot sizes and in areas for development, a lot of that has to be done by the council. And again, this is a living, breathing document. If it's not there now the way we want it, we can make suggestions, and then it will be up to the council to make those decisions whether or not they want to increase sizes or decrease sizes or whatever. And then we can go back later also, or try and do it now. But there has to be an ordinance change in a lot of these areas first in order for us to put it in here, because this has to reflect how the town follows its rules and regulations. And that's what we're doing right now. So again, the council is going to have an opportunity to look at this after we take the first stab. Because a lot of what is in here is stuff that identifies things that the town wants. It identifies who's responsible for those things. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't identify how to pay for some of these things, or the way that the town council wants to prioritize a lot of things. Because in some of these areas, there are things for instance, recreation that are great things, right? But we all know how expensive recreation is. So the town council will get an opportunity to look at all of this. These are recommendations that we're all giving them, and a plan that says, hey, this is where we are now. This is where we want our town to be. And during that time, we will prioritize, and the council will prioritize on which way we go. So it's incumbent upon everybody out there to keep on making sure that they talk to their council members to tell them. And where we have to make ordinance changes, that will be up to town council, but it's up to all of us to tell them what we want changed and help them to change it. So I think this is a really good cut. I'm really interested for real public comment, and then when we go before the council where they want to see it. But I think this is a good stab. I've looked at a lot of the comments that people's made, and like you said, some of it's emotional. This is an emotional time in this town when it comes to development. Understanding. So we just need to cut through the emotion part, look at the facts, because a lot of people have some really good ideas, and then try and build them into the plan for our town that is the way ahead. But again, this is a living, breathing document, like the town manager said earlier. And every couple months, after it's said and done, we need to, as a community, come together and say, hey, this worked or this didn't work. How do we go forward and change it? And I know some of you out there will absolutely be out there helping us to make that this, because it's your town. It's all of our town. I think I've said enough for myself today.
Thank you. Any other comments? Now, Doug, we received this paper earlier before the meeting. and it kind of takes the comments that we received and breaks it down into three categories. Do you want to go through kind of like what we're dealing with and how we should look at each of these categories?
Sure. So, a few things, and I'll defer to the board. And we were taking a lot of notes as we were getting those comments. Some of the comments that we received, the answer might be a quick, yeah, that's a good idea, or the answer might be a quick, that's going to need more research, so that might be difficult to do in this plan. We can certainly do that, but we did, before the meeting, identify broadly. We have three categories of comments, and you all received a handout tonight. It's not detailed with the actual edits or the comments, it's just more bulleted. We have categories of comments where we received comments from some fellow department heads. We received comments from statewide planning already on the economic development chapter, where we sought specific review from them on a few things. One, actually, a person brought up that I believe it was Mr. Nunes brought up that some of the data that he was seeing, we actually have already, not in the plan that you see, but we've revised a lot of the data, updated it, sent that to statewide planning, received comments back, and we do have some comments there. So there's a category of the comments that we see as straightforward. The edits are specific. Oftentimes, it's not a big policy shift. It's just updating a piece of data, updating language, making sure it's accurate. That's a category of comments where it's the Historic Preservation Commission gave us some edits. We saw them as very straightforward, and it's just purely simple. Someone should go through the plan and revise these to make the plan more accurate. These aren't big policy considerations. So that's one category, and we saw that as that's the low-hanging fruit. We wanted to provide the commission with this bulleted list because if you see something in that list that you didn't necessarily agree with, we'd like to hear about it. When the police made a comment, if you said, I think they were a little off base, we'd like to hear about it. Otherwise, that first category, we feel pretty confident to just move forward with edits. The next category, we did get comments, actually even the commission members have provided comments themselves. So you're commenting to yourself, but you're also commenting to your fellow members. These are things that take time. You're giving detailed remarks to your fellow members. We also received comments from the Conservation Commission. We put these in a category of, these are policymakers. You're policymaker. Other commissions can be policymakers. They gave, there was a mix of some ideas that some were specific, some were more broad. That middle category of those comments, we think it's worthy to get your feedback on where you saw something you wanted more definition around, where you wanted planning staff to give you a better idea of a concept. I know one concept that was spoken about in the plan, we got comments from the Conservation Commission about it, and I know that some of the Planning Commission members commented about it, was this concept of the Conservation Commission and the Land Trust being added to the TRC was one comment in the plan. I know that the current arrangement is that those groups can bring their comments directly to the Planning Commission on projects where the Planning Commission seeks that advisory opinion. I know we have some comments around that. So that's a good example. We're looking for feedback. We're looking for guidance. Do we want to give the Conservation Commission and Land Trust a different role, put them on the TRC? Do we want to keep what we have now where they actually could be a direct commenter to the Planning Commission when the project that arises is a fit? And then that's the second category of comments that you see in this bulleted list. The last category of comments are the ones that we've received, kind of public comments from individuals. These aren't policymakers, but they're individuals that have put a lot of time, effort into thinking through the plan, giving you ideas. Some of them are big and broad. It's hard to understand how some of the big, broad concepts work their way into an edit. Some of them are more detailed and specific. I want to hear from you if you heard something that you really want to see the town staff make a change in or better research and explore for your benefit at the next meeting. Those are the categories, and then I'm open to your feedback now. I can also go through the notes that Dennis and I were taking just as we heard the feedback tonight. It could be quick items where, that's something we can do. We see that as a good idea. This is something that might be challenging and require more study. So we can go through that as well.
Okay, why don't we just go down the list and start with the comments that are categorized here as straightforward edits to the plan's content.
Gotcha.
I mean, my personal opinion is, these are comments that are made by, the town's professional staff. These are the people that deal with this stuff on a daily basis. They have the institutional knowledge. They have the, most up-to-date data. They know what the policies and procedures are as they exist today. So my opinion would be that those just be reflected. That seems to be the easiest option. But I'd like to hear from the rest of the board as well.
No, I agree. They're the ones that are tasked and assigned with tasks within the comp plan that they're responsible for. So yeah, I'm good with that.
Makes sense. So, and as background, over the last year, as we've been gearing up for this, we've been sharing this this draft that you're seeing now with staff. We've been ensuring that where you see in the comprehensive plan, where the implementation schedule, we give a responsible party to every action item we have. We've made sure that the responsible parties have seen what, have been given to them, that they understand it, it makes sense to them, and that they're willing to accept that responsibility. So there's a lot of that work that's been happening. Some of it isn't, you don't see it here because it was that they just agreed to it. It didn't need a change. Maybe some of them, there was some tweaking that staff did 6 months ago that you're seeing in the draft. The comments you're seeing are what has resulted out of the most recent round of staff seeking all of the department heads to make sure, is there anything you see? The big component here is most of these are not major policy shifts, and they're very specific edits that are very clean and clear to make. So it doesn't require, you guys to have to debate or discuss, should we take this or that? I think it's just clean and clear. So if the commission is comfortable, that first grouping of bullets, staff is just going to move forward and make those edits for the document for you for the next meeting.
Yeah, as long as it's not, going against policy or changing policy where it needs to be reviewed, I don't have a problem with that.
Great.
I'm comfortable with staff doing that.
Me as well.
Understood.
Yeah, and they've actually itemized it going down and said where they want to make the changes. And those changes do make sense. Again, they're the ones that are going to have to action the plan.
Yep.
Along with the town manager.
And I should note, this is a bit of like a step back. All of the comments that you've received, including the comments from the department heads, the commissions, the other commissions and boards in town, and the public, every comment that you've received is going to be passed along to the town council as well. This process really has two major decision makers. The state law does dictate that this board does need to run a hearing, and the state law dictates that this board is really tasked with developing the document. And the council has the job to adopt the document. We feel it's appropriate for the council to have a full public hearing, but all the comments that we've received, it makes sense the council sees them. Some of them might be incorporated into the plan by the time the council sees them, but whether they are or they aren't, I think the council deserves to see, since we opened this adoption process, what have people had to say? And people will likely even say more. That when it gets to the council, there'll be new comments, and the council can address what they want to see. But I think that's just worth stepping back. All of the comments are part of this entire process. So, as we move through this, folks might say, oh, I'd like to see the details of, where that comment came from. That'll all be part of the record, part of the process as this moves along.
Perfect. Thank you. So that seems pretty straightforward, to make those edits. Moving to the next one, comments from town policymakers. I'll note that I was one of the ones that provided comment. Bouncing off of what Doug had said, it sounds like it was a reoccurring comment about Land Trust and Conservation Commission members being part of the Technical Review Committee. I would say in my experience, being on a TRC in another community, those comments really should be limited to those that can provide technical comments, those that can look back toward a subdivision regulation or building code, zoning code, something like that. I don't know that the TRC is the appropriate avenue for a board to provide comments based off of, I guess, what they would like to see out of a development. There's an opportunity for that certainly at a public hearing, or in comments upon request by a board. But I do think that the TRC should really be based off of data, technical requirements, ordinances, things of that nature. And if anybody else has any questions, comments, concerns about that specific item, we can certainly dive into that.
No, I think we also had similar comments on that. There is a place for it. The issue becomes, where do you make that decision for it? Because the TRC is technical, based off of ordinances, based off state law, based off of written documents that say this is the left and right limits. Conservation in them, it's a little less nuanced, right? So, but there is a place for it. The problem is we have to figure out where that place is, right? And I think those comments should end up with the council, because ultimately the council is going to have to make that decision on that. And I think it's fair that they see all of them, right? Because that is a tough there is a place for that stuff. The only thing we have to be careful of is during the TRC process, when it gets to us, what are these things that are based off of law and what are these based off of opinions? And that becomes the sticky point, right? What's based off of law that we make decisions off, and then what's based off of opinions. But again, there are times when opinions are going to have to drive what we do because it affects what an area looks like or how the people feel about an area and stuff like that. But that's a tough decision to make that, and again, ultimately that decision rests with the council and where they want that board to, that opinion or reference to come into the decision-making process.
Well, that makes sense. It is, and it is, to be clear on that particular item, the actual change that would be affected is the members of the TRC are established by zoning. Zoning only gets changed by action of the town council. So ultimately, however we handle this in the plan, if the council sees fit to change the makeup of the TRC, that's something that can be done by the council initiating a zone change. If I'm hearing the commission correctly, the idea is that you would value getting the comments from these specialty boards, these boards that handle specialty issues, Conservation Commission looking at natural resources, Land Trust looking at open space and usable open space. We also have the Historic District Commission. If I'm hearing you correctly, you'd like to hear from these boards when there's a project that arises that has a particular specific piece of the project that needs that additional component of review. You guys have the arrangement where you can seek an advisory opinion. We did one, don't want to name projects, but we did one recently because we felt there was a project where we wanted to hear more information from the Conservation Commission. Is the understanding that you'd like to keep that arrangement and you'd like this plan to reflect that arrangement of communication? Is that fair?
I agree.
Okay.
Can you go over a little bit about how these boards have historically been utilized by the town? Like the Conservation Commission, that's historically how they have operated, by providing written comment in some form. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I mean, I can only speak to, I know a little bit about before my time. I've been here 2.5, close to 3 years now.
It's important though, before you go,
Please.
where it sits right now by ordinance also,
Yeah.
right? Where it sits by ordinance right now, and then how it's worked, and then a decision can be made, because again, ultimately that decision whether or not to change it rests with the council.
Yep. So I know historically that some of these boards did provide written comments to the commission when we then actually, if you're looking at specifically the Conservation Commission, they went into a period where they couldn't have a meeting because they didn't have a quorum. Essentially, that group needed to be reestablished. And when they were reestablished, that was somewhere maybe 6 months into my tenure here. We looked at the charter. which is the code or the commission ordinance that tells the commission what's their role, what's their charge, and that comes from the council. The idea is that in the same way that the zoning board can't advise the town on taxation issues because that's not what they're charged with. State law doesn't provide them that purview. The council hasn't provided them that purview. We looked at it, and the Conservation Commission is tasked with evaluating the town's needs and priorities with resource protection and a variety of different issues, but it did not task the Conservation Commission or another board like the Land Trust with a codified development review role. To me, I'd like to, if that's the goal, is to give them a codified development review role, then that's something that can be done. Again, a code change. And that is something that, however that may look, it's a code change that the council can authorize. When we interpret that code, I see it as pretty clear that if the commission is seeking it, and when it seeks it, you can, but every town board can't elect to participate in a development review process if they're not charged with it. And that's something that we've had discussions on in the background for several years now. But we're open to the feedback, and also the council will have a chance to weigh in on this topic in the coming months. If they want to see a change to the comp plan to pave the way for a different direction there, they also, even if there wasn't a change to the comp plan, I believe this is an area where they could make an ordinance change. So that's good feedback to get from this board. This board, you're tasked with, and by state law and by your charge with local commission, you have to review and act on all developments. You're charged with that. You have timeframes that you need to work within, state codified timeframes. If we don't act within those timeframes, projects are approved without our opportunity to weigh in and to offer perhaps revisions. So that's why we're always focused on ensuring this board's in a position to act within the time it needs to act. And that's part of when we established TRC, it was to ensure that you got timely comments as these applications arrived to you. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and I would just add that logistically, I'm curious how that would work, because as a board, would they have to have a meeting prior to the TRC meeting to come to some sort of consensus and then have a member as a representative of the entire body? I just think, to your point, it would cause delays that would put us under more scrutiny, more pressure to get a decision over the finish line when, we're trying to review everything and taking a lot of information at one time and trying to get a vote. I would be worried that it would delay the process. And then I would also add that there's really nothing that's preventing that board from following the meetings and providing written comment, even if not asked for it. They can have their meeting, they can review applications. Never mind.
So, I mean, one thing I want to be mindful of is for major projects in which we anticipate there might need to be a more robust review. Oftentimes these projects do come to you as pre-apps. I have told the chairs of these sub-boards, I'll refer to them as like boards that have a specialty expertise or an interest. If they see a project where they think that their expertise can be particularly utilized, I ask them, and I've told the chairs, you're allowed to present to the commission that you're interested and you believe that that project would be a fit. That's not seeking to provide substantive comment. It's really just letting you know if this is a project you'd like our expertise on, let us know. Then that gives a lot of opportunity. You're putting the board, you're putting the developer or applicant on notice. You should be planning ahead and seeking this advisory opinion as you come in for submission. And that way, when it does get submitted, you all have the time frame to act within without having to go back and forth between this board then authorizes that board to speak, that board meets 1 month later, they give an opinion, then you meet 1 month after that. We only have most of these applications 90 days to react. It doesn't provide a lot of time to go back and forth in the way that town meetings work, month to month, back and forth. So I have encouraged those boards to watch our agendas. The bigger projects, we do pre-app. We seek all the feedback we can get at pre-app. And if the feedback we're getting is this board should seek advisory opinions, I've seen this board, they generally do listen, and they have sought those advisory opinions on those bigger projects. So I'll leave it there.
But Doug, the only way, I guess what their comeback could possibly, the only way that they know about these projects is if they're looking for them.
Correct.
So maybe that's something we discuss down the road of maybe creating something that they can go to that is a little bit more preemptive, right? So they're less reactive and see it. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think that's probably would be their feeling that, well, we don't know it's happening.
Yeah.
Because they would actually have to go look. And that's part of our job, is to look for these things, but not everyone feels that way, right?
Understood.
Everyone's got other lives. So maybe that's something that we do to maybe see if a way collectively how we can help them see these things that are coming so they can have an opportunity. Because I'm sure they probably feel right now the reason some of them want this is because they don't see these things coming, and then they hear about it after we've approved them, and they may have had a comment up front. I don't know how we figure out, maybe we work with town manager and work with you and we figure out maybe there's a way that we have a consolidated website or something up front where they can go into, or part of the website that the town has where they can sign in and they can see certain stuff.
Yeah.
But maybe that's something we can like, that might put some of their concerns to rest, and then they can feel part of
I think that's a good comment, and I think you're right. There are times where I've certainly am aware that the members of these commissions are looking closely at agendas, pending agendas, looking at what projects there are. But there are times, I mean, everyone has lives. And there are times where they just, they didn't get a chance to be on top of it that month. They look at it the next month, and by that month, they've missed the pre-app. And, the meeting happened and the vote occurred. And sometimes we do hear from, some of the members of the boards, oh, I wish I could have weighed in on that. First off, to be clear, any member of any board is allowed to approach you individually. They can come, they can write you a comment, they can give you comment individually. The real trick is acting as a board, because now the town has a body that's acting in a formal capacity, and we have to be thoughtful about when that is within their charge and within the code. Communication is key. I feel pretty good about what the planning staff have set up over the last few years in terms of our web presence, in terms of putting good documents available on the web. But you're right, perhaps what was needed is to be able to share when these documents are first placed on the web, to be able to share that on a monthly rhythm with the members of these commissions and say, if you see something, just be mindful. This is your chance to consider approaching, seeking, providing the idea that this is a project you'd like to provide your formal town board input on. And if they see that at a pre-app and they get the email, they come and they comment. When that project comes back a few months later as a voting stage, well, hey, the commission's already aware. Is that I think you have a good idea. I think communication is a good component of this.
Yes, that's exactly what and again, people tend to think when they're not aware of something that there's something else going on, when there's absolutely nothing, but there's that sense. So maybe sometimes we take that little extra step to make them feel inclusive.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Well taken.
Right. Moving on, any other comments, questions, concerns about what we've received so far, through email, through our packets, or anything we've heard tonight? Okay, so Doug, next step.
Sure. I mean, we certainly have reviewed all of the comments that have come in. I think it's worth, the folks that spoke tonight, that took the time to come, as they went through their ideas, I think that is worth giving an example of where we see there being some fits and where we see there being tricky fits. And if you don't mind, I mean, I could take a few minutes and just go point by point on a few things. I ask the board, jump out if you think what I'm suggesting is not aligned with what you're thinking. That way we know, because our goal is to give you a document back that you feel good about voting on next month, or I'm sorry, this month, April 29th. We'll start with Mr. Nunes, who came up. He had the idea of striking the language about deviating from code. We've reviewed that. I don't have a huge concern with that. I don't think that that code necessarily disallows or specifically allows the town to, treat the zoning code as optional or not. But the language, if it's viewed as problematic, and I can understand why, I don't mind striking that. I don't know if that language is the linchpin behind whether a developer can or cannot abide by zoning, but I also don't mind striking it. There was a comment about, can we change the language in our comp plan so that a comprehensive permit, which is allowed 5 units per acre bonus on top of underline, that's dictated by state law. Unfortunately, state law says you're allowed your underlying zoning, and then you get 5 bonus units per acre on top, comp permit. So that's what state law says. No matter what we said in our comprehensive plan, we are not allowed to render state law invalid. It's not a terrible idea, but we can't use. Yeah, appreciate it, Mr. Nunes. Where there's an idea to put in some language around bald eagle protection, I don't have a big concern with that. I see that as a very small issue. It's come up recently, but we know we have a bald eagle there. I don't have a problem with the suggestion of including a reference to bald eagle in the comprehensive plan in that area that was directed.
And again, I would think if we do that, there's already federal law on this.
For sure.
Okay, that we make sure that when we do it, that we are following federal law, and even if we reference federal law in it, which we can, so that there's no issue with.
Put in Northeast Bald Eagle project.
That's fine, as long as we are referencing federal law, because that's what it's based off of, right? And we can include that in the comp plan. That way, it covers the totality of it. All I would say is where there's a law, that we reference that in the comp plan if we're going to reference the law or the action to it.
There was a comment about a lot of focus from Mr. Nunes there's a lot of focus on Johnston's Pond. He wanted to see Lake Tioga and Breezy Lake. Yes, I think that's a fine area to make a change. My staff noted he thought that Lake Tioga is mentioned somewhere in and around there, but we're going to look at it. We're going to make sure I agree. Lake Tioga is a valuable resource. It's impaired. Breezy Lake, I think these Upper Dam Pond, we don't mind being inclusive if there's an area of the plan that is meant to be broad and talk about broad protections of water bodies. Then if we start listing some, we want to make sure we list the right ones. I know there's a lot of language in the plan specific to Johnston's Pond setting up for a redevelopment plan. That's what GZA has provided. That's their vision. We're trying not to necessarily tamper with that because Johnston's Pond does have a different focus. But I don't mind that concept, and then we're gonna move forward. You'll see some of these changes. There were some comments about housing chapters. We've got comments about housing chapter from a few folks. We've taken the notes. My recommendation is that we work with the new housing chapter as opposed to trying to wordsmith this current housing chapter. That does go along with some of the density conversations we've having where we want to shape and form it and locate these things. That's my recommendation. I'm happy to hear the board if you thought this plan should have a change now. Yeah.
No, that's what I was gonna say. We may change it in here, and then when we go back and redo the housing plan, that change may get lost in what we're doing at that point. I would say take all those comments and put them aside, and then when we start to redo the housing chapter, we look at those comments and where they can be incorporated, we do. Where they can't, we can address why they can't be incorporated.
And we're gonna have separate hearings anyways on it.
Correct. The town council will have.
We really don't want to confuse it.
Yeah. Well, and what we're going to, and keep in mind, we're going to first move past this process, this current plan, then we'll send it to the state. What I'm anticipating and what I'm kind of planning timing wise is that around August, maybe September as the later component, we're going to have information and content to react to on the new draft chapter. Obviously, it's not quite as bulky. We're down from a big plan down to one chapter, but it's a critical chapter to get right. And so I think we want to have robust public engagement, hear from folks, have the planning commission to be able to weigh in on it, have the council be able to weigh in on it, get consensus on that document, and then have it ready for the end of the calendar year. So when the state's done, we're done. I know the council has terms that'll be ending in November. I really want to be able to ensure these council members that are tracking this, are going through this current comp plan adoption, have the opportunity to weigh in on that document and get consensus. And then before they leave, they'll know that they had the opportunity to help guide the future. Again, nobody could, anybody can raise a different idea. I'd like to conduct a deeper study. I'd like to change the plan in this way. All of those things can happen immediately after the plan's adopted. We could consider changes again. So no one's stepping on the toes of future council members, but I'd like this current council group to weigh in before they leave. That'd be the fall of this year. So there were some comments that we got around economic development data. The commission hasn't seen it. We've done some work in the background on that. The draft you have doesn't reflect this yet, but we were aware that there's a lot of stale data in the economic development element. Planning staff has already revised that stale data. It was basically, without changing a lot of policy, we updated a lot of the charts and tables in that element. We sent that to statewide planning already. We got informal comments back on it, and they gave us a few edits here and there, but it generally looked good. Nothing in the economic development element changed greatly from a policy standpoint because the data didn't greatly shift what we should be doing. The data we discussed, that is maybe 3-year-old data, the revised data didn't tell us a different story. It didn't shift our perspective, but we needed updated data to make sure the plan was accurate and contemporary. So you're going to see, as part of the next round in April, a lot of changes to the data and the tables in economic development. Let's see, a couple other comments. There was discussion about the school buses and maintenance. So there was like a kind of provision around where school buses are stored.
Yeah, they were moved.
They were moved. There was discussion about Tiffany Road, and I know that my staff is telling me Tiffany Road is mentioned as, I think this loosely was in like a impaired roadway intersections. I think one intersection of Tiffany Road was mentioned in our document, but we can further review the comment that was made to see if that needs to be changed at all, if that needs to be addressed. We know Tiffany Road's a challenging road, and we know it is low-lying, especially where it gets towards Tioga.
Yeah, so they were talking about, Mr. Nunes was talking about adding Tiffany Road and East Shore Road to flood-prone
Yeah,
areas.
I think
Here's the thing.
Tiffany Road, there's an intersection with Tiffany that's listed, but we will look closer at that and make sure
Are
that
they
covers.
listed in the federal database, federal flood zone map, right? Because there are those concerns too. So we have to be careful. Yes, it may flood, but is it on the flood map for the federal government? And if it's not, we have to be careful because there are ramifications to when you put something in a flood zone for insurance purposes for things. So one, do we have the right to do that? I think we have to look at it first. So we have to be careful when we do that.
My friends are gonna be pissed.
All right, so all I'm saying is let's make sure that when we're looking at those kinds of things, especially the maps and stuff, that we are within our left and right boundaries.
Yep, that makes sense. And I think that's a valid comment. And I do think that the FEMA flood maps have to be considered. The town can't arbitrarily decide where but also the comp plan's goal is to call out local concerns, and if they match and they're aligned with where we have data that backs it up, then let's highlight those. And we're gonna take a closer look at that, make sure that the area we called out is the right area. There were comments about traffic. We should make sure that as we review traffic, we're reviewing it holistically. I understand, I get it that some developers, they give us one study that makes sure their project gets over the finish line. We have recently, I don't want to name projects, but there has been a large scale development that within the last calendar year gave us a holistic traffic study of every project, every anticipated new project that was coming forward. We did ask someone that was seeking an approval to really study this. They were at a critical intersection. And so we have been conducting what I would say traffic studies that are meant to look at everything and measure the impacts, not necessarily one project at a time, but measure the impacts of the other pending projects. So we do have good information, and we are working behind the scenes on some traffic-related infrastructure studies to ensure our infrastructure is not, is basically we can get ahead of it as these projects are developed and built, especially in the center of New England region, that we've identified what intersections need to be fixed, to what degree, and when, and ensuring that we're ahead of that game and not asking one developer, you fix that, but it's the town needs to understand. This intersection is going to be impacted by 12 different developments. The town needs to understand how it's going to leverage the resources we need to do it with development. Sometimes these are state roads, sometimes they're off ramps on highways. How are we going to work with RIDOT to make sure we're doing this right? Good point. And I think sometimes people look at it and their purview of coming in here is looking at one project, one development. I didn't quite see it there. We are looking broadly and globally, and we do have studies and we're working through new infrastructure studies on that. The school, there was discussions about school impacts, projects that can overwhelm schools. We have an annual, or actually probably 2 times a year, where the superintendent of schools asks for updates on all the pending projects. These are projects that are starting at pre-app. These are projects that might not be built for 5 years. They're seeing them and they're being made aware of where the growth is occurring, where the units are coming in, how many bedrooms they have. The school does have a process where they start to incorporate that into their facilities plan. They understand if they're going to get a lot of units, specifically 3, 4, 5-bedroom units, what that means. They have their own work where they've studied this. They know how to project what kind of kids they might expect out of different sizes. So we have a pretty active communication with the school superintendent to make sure no one's getting caught off guard. And these are things where we're giving them this information on projects that are not going to be built for 2 or 3 years. So, it's good comments. We do work in the background to make sure there's good communication. We got some other comments that were about villages. I think it's fair territory to say we can discuss if we have the right vision statement for different villages, some comments about Summit Village. I think I'm open to the board's guidance. I think even Mr. Studley in one of his comments had suggested we should look at the vision statements associated with these villages. Keep in mind, anything we do to change the comprehensive plan right now, that would tell us perhaps we should change a zone. Right now, there is a commercial zone in Summit Village. It is our rural village commercial zone. It allows a range of uses. We can address what we want to see with that zone in particular with this plan. However, it's also possible to go right to the council and say there's a mix of uses that are inappropriate for that zone. That zone has been part of this plan. It has been there for quite a while. So that would be a policy shift if we wanted to remove that commercial zone from that area. That's certainly something that can be looked at and studied. That is something that would be a pretty significant policy shift if we were to remove that zone entirely. That's something that we can look at. I heard the comments. We were taking notes, so we're going to look at those village statements and we're going to see how that aligns. We got comments about conducting studies, a range of studies. My thought there is that's great. If studies take money and they take time, we want to make sure we can allocate what we need to for those studies. But we should be mindful of this plan. We're trying to get this plan on track for final state review, final state approval by the end of this calendar year. So again, there's nothing that stops us from starting a study that might tell us how we want to change our plan in 1 year, 2 years from now. We can do that. This plan is meant to be a living document. It's meant to change. It's meant to evolve as we get new information. I have no problem if the future steps and council members want to add in language to this plan saying we need to conduct the studies. That's fine. It's the first place that it might go. But basically, that would be the council instructing itself to allocate and prioritize these things. I have no problem with any of that.
Hey, Doug.
Yep.
As far as those studies go, I believe it was Councilwoman Ionati that was talking about that. I understand what an environmental impact study is. I understand what a traffic study is. But they're usually tied to projects or development or that triggers those studies. So I was kind of lost when she was saying we need studies. is study just a general study for the town, or that's where I was a little off, and I was hoping if you had some clarification on that.
It's a good question. I mean, there's a lot, and a lot of it is the devil's in the details. I believe there was, if I could speak broadly about it, I think there was interest in understanding a infrastructure study, the capacities and limitations of our infrastructure. That's certainly something that the town staff have active information on now. It is something that we do have a range of different studies that are occurring at any given time. But the idea is, I think that let's understand what's the goal, what's the purpose of a future-looking study? Is it to look at, for example, Western Coventry and the limitations of infrastructure and how that might inform us? Western Coventry is reflected with low-density zoning. Most of Western Coventry is 5-acre lot zoning. So that's where we get these relationships between infrastructure and zoning density. If that's not accurate and there's a desire on any part to want to study a specific area, a specific concern, a specific piece of infrastructure, we can definitely do that. I think the first step is to understand what we already know, what we're already actively. We need more data, and how will that help us? I know that related to traffic, school, environmental, flooding. I mean, all of those things. I mean, we have information about our stormwater infrastructure. There's ongoing work to review. There's ongoing, we do have grants that are making potential improvements to stormwater infrastructure. I think the first step is to really understand what's happening now, how we're addressing these issues now, and then identify where there's gaps we can improve. Let's identify it. Let's prioritize it. Let's get the money, and then let's move forward with that. I think that's a fine idea. Yep. And then I know there were additional comments about increasing impact fees. That is something that the impact fees had actually recently been raised within the last calendar year or so. And I do think that is something that would need more study before we put into a plan. We shouldn't, that is the kind of thing there needs to be a direct correlation between the town's costs to upgrade, maintain infrastructure, roadways, and services, and what the money dollar amount should be. I don't know if at this point in time we could say that we should change that or pick a new number as part of this comp plan. But I know that when we reviewed it a year ago, and we raised the fees a year ago, there was conversation at that point. If we want to revisit that, I'd probably defer to the council on that one. If they see it as a priority, they want to revisit, then I think it begins with a study. It doesn't begin with picking a number. So I think that's not a bad idea, but that's something I don't necessarily see as we're ready to say in this comp plan, let's increase impact fees. I think it's, if we want to study it, let's study it. Does that make sense?
Didn't the council raise some impact fees 2 council meetings ago, I believe?
After we did a study, we raised it from 5,800 to 6,800. And that was, usually that's only done in 5-year increments usually. But that's what it is right now, is 6,800 is the impact.
I'm sure that'll be a topic of conversation when we have a hearing with the council.
No, that's fair. And so for those that didn't hear that, the town manager was just relaying that we recently raised our fees. This was about a year ago, and they had been studying it beginning from about a year and a half ago, from about $5,800 to $6,800. Is that accurate? So that's that's something that we don't pick those numbers arbitrarily. We study what's the town's needs, and then we correlate it to what's an appropriate nexus to each housing unit. I think that covers my overview of the comments we heard. I think there was a lot of good comments. Many of them we will be taking, and you'll be seeing reflected in this. Some of them require a little more research on our end to understand if they'll make it into this immediate draft you'll see in 3 weeks. But I appreciate all the comments that came, because this is what we're here for. We're here to hear the perspectives. We're here to see how we can manage this plan and manage the town's growth the best way we can. Any other comments, questions from the commission, guidance that maybe an item you didn't hear that you wanted to see, an idea that we didn't discuss that you want us to look at closer?
No, I would say at this point, make the changes that we can without huge sweeping policy changes and let's get this thing over the finish line and move forward with the housing element at a future date. As we move forward towards the April, you said 29th?
Yeah,
meeting?
Wednesday, April 29th, 6:30, this room.
So that will be a public hearing, is that?
That will be a public hearing on the comprehensive plan. We will certainly take comments again. The revised draft of the comprehensive plan, we will work to get that onto the website as quickly as we can. Now that we have the feedback, we have a little direction. Town staff will put that document onto our standing comprehensive plan webpage. For anyone that's listening to this, if you're not sure where that is, if you just go to the planning department page, you'll see a link near the top of the page for the comprehensive plan update. Go there. The documents will be there. I think to avoid confusion, I think as the town staff updates this document for you, we're just going to replace what's on the webpage. It might be too much to give people a before and after. I think it might create too much confusion. Also, the document's so big, we have to put it on our webpage as 3 separate hyperlinks. It's like, you know, to read the document, you're already clicking 3 separate links to read one document. It's just because it's big. It's also got a lot of visual information. It makes it a heavy document. We're going to replace that. When we do, the information on the webpage that describes the whole process will describe, we updated this plan on this date to, to incorporate the Planning Commission's feedback we received. The webpage serves as an update for the process. That webpage will stay there. It will continue to be updated as we move through the Planning Commission review onto the Town Council. As drafts are edited, we'll continue to use that webpage. So I advise anyone that's interested, check that webpage. You're also feel free. We're certainly still taking comments before the meeting, and we'll certainly take more comments at the April 29th meeting. My goal, and I think it's the goal of the commission, we wanted to hear from folks, but also our goal is to vote on this on April 29th. We want the feedback, but we want to be able to move this plan to the council so they can put it into a position to adopt.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify. I didn't ask for any commercial industry to be removed from Summit Village. I know of at least 3 businesses up and running right now. And so what I was just asking was to preserve the historical nature and obviously consider the natural resources. Thank you so much.
That's
I
fair.
appreciate it.
Thank
No,
you.
that's a fair comment. Thank you. Other questions, feedback from the commission?
It does look like we have one hand up. We can allow for one more comment.
Yeah, no,
Before
we can let folks in.
Break.
I just wanted to say thank you guys for doing a great job. I appreciate you. And I just wanted to say thanks for listening to everyone. And this was a great meeting. That's all I have.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Any other comments from anybody? All right. So we'll move forward to the April 29th meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming out, providing comments, and hopefully we'll see you at a future hearing. With that, if there's nothing else on the agenda, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.